Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Scaling Up and specifically the question of recruiting employees. That's the first step into growing a firm on a personal level because you have to recruit people, you have to attract them, and you have to hire them. And the question is, how do you do that? First of all, it starts with the question of attracting people. And as I said before, Porsche doesn't need to attract people. They get actually applications on a daily level because everyone wants to go work for Porsche. However, do you want to work for Lilium? Well, nowadays people want to do that because Lilium was on LinkedIn's top startups 2019 in Germany and first in 2020 due to an above average number of applications. And how did they get that done? Actually, they had a great video there showing company culture, showing their vision, telling people that's a once-in-a-lifetime chance to change something. They were putting some emphasis on a diverse and inclusive workforce, especially with a strong focus on a team, so you might feel at home there. And they looked at the extensive employee benefits like cafeteria, gym, language courses, relaxation room, and so on. So they promoted not only their company in a very good way, you can change the world by being part of Lilium, but they also promoted the workplace in a very good way. That's the first step into getting attraction. And that's very important. If you get that done, then people actually will also look at jobs you will offer to them. And this is the next step for a company. It's not only attracting, now we're getting closer to hiring. And if you want to hire, you look at resumes, you use social media, you consider job seekers. You might go to local universities, you do a founders talk there, you might maximize your job postings visibility. So you basically try to also get your job postings out there with also messages you'd like to get out there. And there's also companies that might help you, like Indeed, which says keep an eye out for talent everywhere, from industry conferences and networking events to dinner parties and coffee runs. There are practically unlimited opportunities for finding potential hires. And this is actually what founders often do, and I do see that by myself. If I do my lectures and I invite founders, and those founders always have interesting company talks, interesting founder talks on the one side, and on the other side, at the very end of their talk, in most cases, is you can always email me if you're interested in working with us, and we can talk about jobs and job offers. So that's the step from attracting into hiring. And if you want to go deeper into hiring, writing and attention grabbing and thorough job description is crucial to engage with qualified candidates. Then you have to be more specific. Meaning more specific is writing, creating compelling job descriptions, making titles as specific as possible, so telling the people really what you expect from them, including the essentials, the core responsibilities, but also what's around them, and giving them a good description. Or as David Williams said, in today's economy, hiring the best people is more critical than ever. Entrepreneurs can't afford to lose time, money, and results from a bad hiring choice. So if you do that in a very compelling, very good way, then you can also have the possibility to hire really good people, hire better than yourself, as we said before. But how do you do that? Actually, hiring is one thing to think about. Then if you have access to people and people came to you and people were kind of like part of now your recruitment process, it's not only about attracting the right candidates, but also keeping engaged with those candidates. Select the appropriate candidates and sealing the deal. So kind of like a regular hiring process is taken from Startup Bootcamp, who's taking care of that. But in a startup arena, kind of like very important also to be, at least at the very beginning and maybe also in later stages, the founder's job. I started to say that founders, they have the founders talk, they go on conferences and so on, and people start talking to them. You hand the business card over, so you attract people that are talking to you. And if you attract them and they don't get back to you, maybe you get back to the group you were talking to with a nice email. So you keep candidates potentially engaged. And whenever they then send you an application or at least a CV, you might look at that closer and try to find jobs or try to stick them in the company if you don't have a clear job description where you're hiring people. And again, there's always quotes which we have, but that's especially for startups an important quote, since Esther Stevens says, keep your startup recruiting proactive. This does mean you have to get proactive with getting a plan down, learning how to interview for attitude, and engage in the candidates from the moment they come to your radar to make them feel valued. Engage with them. Be more proactive than established companies need to do that. I mean, it's the same like entrepreneurial marketing on a different level. If we look at the potential candidates a little closer, you can look at a 6C structure in order to describe what your employees should bring to the table and what you need from your employees. For sure, they have to be competent. They have to be able to fulfill the job necessary. And they have to be capable and willing to take the responsibility. But there's also more areas. And one is the compatibility to your culture. So if you, for example, live a team culture, have a leadership style, that a very democratic style that needs team players, then be very careful if people only want to sit alone in their own offices, because that might not fit to your culture. And I know that from my own chair. We always try to hire good people, but we also hire people who fit to the team perfectly. Because if they don't want to be part of the team, it's probably not working out the way it is intended. Always look at people who are committed, and they're committed to you, not only just looking for a job, but looking for the specific job you're offering, being committed in the Lilium case, for example, to the mission and vision Lilium is following on. Having some kind of character and maybe adding to your own culture in being, as I said, the team player, but having the compatibility to your company. So it's not only about competencies, it's also about compatibility, your culture, commitment, character. So you look at your company and you think, what kind of player do I need to have in? And if you have an HR department, they need to identify the right candidates and maybe also need to decide whether you need young candidates or experienced candidates, because this is, especially for a growing company, the main question there. Growing firms should always hire employees that are adaptable, can perform regardless of the challenge, self-motivated, deliver great results. However, that doesn't answer the question. Because if you look at entrepreneurial companies, in many cases, founder is pretty young. They start the company in their 20s, maybe beginning of 30s. But then they're growing the company, and as we had the example of, now they have to build a culture. They never built a culture before. So you might hire someone who has expertise in building a culture. That answers your question. You need an experienced person. However, you might also want to open your company in Southeast Asia or in South America. Maybe you need younger people who are closer to the learning processes and experiment themselves into those countries. or you want someone who already has experience with the Southeast Asian culture or the Southern American culture. So these questions are the ones which you answer then when your company is grown bigger. And in the example of N26, one of the German unicorns and very much establishing itself right now, what happens there is 5 out of 7 employees of the current N26 management team who already managers or experts in their area before joining the company. You see that even in the management team, they answered the question proactively to more experience. You remember the Facebook example and hiring Sheryl Sandberg. So this is one of the main questions for companies when they grow, and it gets especially important when the company grows. And this is where you can try to differentiate, or how you can try to differentiate young employees to experienced employees. And it's only a brief summary, it's only on the very surface level, but it gives you at least some indication. So start with the first area, and there are 4 areas to that. The learning. If you hire young employees, they're young, they are unexperienced, but they might be more willing to learn, and or might not do one thing which more experienced people sometimes tend to do. More experienced sometimes tend to tell the world what to do, not trying to learn what they have to do and how to use their experience. So they don't want to prove they're smart. So they are more willing to learn probably, instead of experienced employees that sometimes fall back into existing patterns. And if you want to disrupt something, existing patterns might not help you there. Secondly, the environment. And again, environments with many young employees are generally a little more dynamic because they're at a certain stage of their own personal development. Maybe they don't have family, don't have kids, so they don't need to take care of that area. Instead, experienced employees contribute to establish routines and knowledge. So there's a great contribution to there, but it's a different work style, it's a different approach. Third, the knowledge. For sure, experience is experience, so it's directly related to higher job knowledge. Recent graduates might possess more up-to-date understanding of things, but definitely lacking the experience of the adaptation of this knowledge. And fourth, what about the roles? Young employees are more adaptable to changing roles that require continuous learning. And some roles for experienced peoples require prior experience, that's for sure. So, however, the change of the roles is not that easy because, again, as we said, they might fall back into existing patterns. And a recent study, by the way, shows that most founders place the highest value on ability and knowledge when hiring new employees. Well, that's only a flashlight of a study. Actually, for each and every hire which you do, you might look at exactly that question of experience versus young employees and what do you need for that specific position. What about the Tesla example and the recruitment process for Tesla's Gigafactory? Actually, what they do is, and that was Elon Musk is doing, and that's his management task, and this is how you can see how important his own involvement is. He hires HR management experts. And this is his own task. In order to look at these people, check whether they're on the same page in terms of vision for Tesla, and he might relate on working with them. However, when they have the HR experts, they implement an HR management infrastructure within the firm and start the personal planning and also the hiring, building corporate culture, and so on. So they hire a complete HR management team which organizes the recruitment of functional experts, and this is not what Elon Musk is doing later on. So he focuses on the first steps in order to get this going, and then later on He let others do it. So that's kind of like a perfect delegation in that case. And it's still under construction right now, where we'll see the outcome in a couple of years, how this company works out, and then we can also the outcome or the result of that way of hiring people.